Late yesterday afternoon, I took my usual Saturday afternoon walk to reflect on what I might say today. But yesterday I was accompanied by my 16-year-old Isamu, my grandson. And so I took the opportunity to use his brain on this address today. So you might say that what you're going to hear has been taken from both ends of the age spectrum, and I hope it might be meaningful for you. We've all heard somebody ranting and raving about something. There might be a real grievance, but they're all over the place and very much out of control. And you might say, well, this is, we can overlook this because it's a once-off. But other people will say, no, we know you only have to press his buttons on any issue and off he goes. That's the kind of personality he has. Personality. Oh yes, and you've met the other kind of person. Ever charming in public, but you could be shocked to know how much her daughter hates her. In fact, the daughter will tell you, there are two sides to my mother's personality. There's this very charming side that you see, but there's this deplorable and abrasive side that we have to put up with. Personality. And there is that other person. Did you see his ugly behavior in the traffic? Did you hear her rigid views on some social issue? Did you know they're highly successful people, wealthy, with all the trimmings that go with wealth and success, but their kids, selfish, full of entitlement, messed up in their personality? Personality. The television over the recent weeks, recent days in fact, have been pointing to several young people, some of whom are now dead, who were seriously damaged by adults, who themselves surely had major disturbance in their personality. Whatever got into these adults to inflict such behavior on these people as young kids at school? And there is that other concern that I frequently hear about. It is the older person telling me, or sometimes it's their family telling me, that their father, their uncle, their mother are deteriorating. They've now become grumpy people, whereas they weren't like that earlier. They have now become increasingly secretive. They've lost that bubbly personality they once had. Personality again. Personality can change as you grow older. I'm going to be talking about that in my next Sage group at the end of the month. But it's personality, personality. Unless you think that today this is going to be a psychological lecture entirely, let me remind you just for a moment of one line I read to you from the Old Testament today. One of the most profoundly important lines in all of Scripture. And you'll find it in that first song, that first servant song in the book of Isaiah. The third line, in fact, it says, "There is this servant whom I affirm and support." And here's the line, "And I have given him my good spirit. He will be energized with this good spirit." The really good personality that we would all like to see surely is the one energized with a good spirit. But how do we get it? How do we keep it in place? Or how do we get it back when it has drifted away from us? They're the questions. Of course, we often evade the thought that all of us ordinary people can drift into a loss of personality. Sometimes if I wear my other hat, we sometimes call it a borderline personality state, or a shadow of a borderline state, in which we in fact lose touch with that good spirit we once had. Is it going to ring again? No, good. So sometimes we can lose touch with it. And we become less than what we were. Even destructive in our way of being, in the way we think, in our relationships, in our emotional turbulence, in our own self-pathology. So we need to find ways to intercept this drift into those shadows, to restore our personality, or to heal its damaged and destructive places. We could start with the children. We hear a great deal about the importance of teaching children the 3 R's. Reading, writing, arithmetic. Reading, writing, arithmetic. We're now seeing that important as those 3 R's are, they need to be augmented by what I call 5 bigger R's. Relationships. We're not good at them. We need learning in our relationships. Reasonableness. Regulation of our emotional life. Finding a good resilience. Knowing how to release ourselves from our many blockages in our personality. There are 5, often not taught in our schools, needing to be taught. These days we're all aware of the danger of blocked arteries. We're not so aware of how our personality can become blocked. We know that we can develop a tumour in our body without being aware of the steady growth that's taking place. We also need to recognise that we can develop a personality disorder that can steadily grow, gradually curtail our enjoyments, our satisfactions, and block our growth. I've spoken before here about the research work of 2 psychologists from the United States, McRae and Costa, who picked out 5 factors to the personality. And in fact, those 5 factors in the literature have become known as the Big 5. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. If you take the first letter of each, you won't forget them. They spell out ocean. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. They spell out ocean. But as soon as you apply them to your own personality, you might notice that we would want to say you need 2 more. 2 more. Because so much depends on circumstance anyway. You see, I can be very extrovert in certain situations, but in other situations I can be withdrawn and introverted. So we need to think of our personality in terms of the context we're in at a particular time. So I add 2 more to the Big 5, 2 more. And you've heard me speak about them, at least in the Sage group. 2 further characteristics. I, for inspiration. We need inspiration. We need to be inspiring people somewhere there. And C, a further C, to be creative. So again, if you spell out the words, I now have oceanic, I-C on the end of it. I would like to do better still, because McRae and Costa's Big 5, they sit well for the psychologist doing psychological tests to devise where we are with any one of those 5 factors. In fact, my grandson yesterday said to me, "Where do you think you are? What do you score on those seven items? That made me think for quite some time. The everyday personality of the young mother, for example, or the elderly man in declining years, we need to say these 5 things, 7 things, don't sit as they might. Good for the psychologist, but what about for us ordinary other people? So what would I put there? Yes, openness is important, to be open. Conscientiousness sounds just a little bit too like that high-push, high-performing public school idea. I would prefer colour. Put a little colour in your life and measure that. But if you balk and say, colour, what are you talking about? Well, buy a pink jug, would you, and put it on the shelf just to remind you of a little colour. Or buy some bright green pyjamas and wear them occasionally. Or as, what was her name, Jenny Joseph said, when I'm an old woman, do you remember what she said? I shall wear purple. So would you start wearing purple? It's the St. Michael's colour anyway. Wear purple. Put yourself on that scale. Or extroversion. That's a little bit moralistic, isn't it? So I prefer excitement. Put yourself on the excitement scale. Where are you? Because so often we can drift into boredom, apathy. Agreeableness? No, I prefer a more overtly active word like affirmation. To be an affirming person. We need more people to be affirming. And for neuroticism is one of the negative words in the psychological basket. Let's take it out and put it over there and think rather of the niceties of life. Be part of the niceties of life. That's a good end. So openness, colour, excitement, affirmation, the niceties. Be part of the niceties. I'd keep my 2 extras, inspiration, we all need that, and creativity. Well, you might say, I'm not a very creative person. Well, then become a co-creator. Join with somebody else and help build a better world. That's being creative. Of course, to be difficult, I'd like to add one more letter, S. Put an S on the end of the oceanic. S for sympathy. Sympathy. It is a very important aspect of the human personality, too often neglected. As Isamu said yesterday, we become cynical, whereas we should become more sympathetic. Developing, learning, expressing sympathy for the sadness in so many hearts. Many people would say, well, look, in fact, personality is what you're born with. You can't change it. And some of the psychological textbooks say, once you get the grade 1, that's it. Well, of course, that's bunkum. Real bunkum. These 7 or 8 personality factors are all subject to learning, and they're all subject to influence, and they're all subject to change. And we know it. So that might help us focus again on the words I've chosen from the Scriptures. I've given him my good spirit. I have energized him with a good spirit. If we can be in touch with a good spirit, often avoided by the psychologists, by the way, but if we can be in touch with a good spirit, if we are within the influence of a good spirit, we're often then swept up out of all those personality factors into the experience of a different kind of personality, of freedom and flow and the flourishing personality, of the generous and graceful and grateful personality. More than that, into the helpful, humorous, harmonious, hopeful personality. You can't remember all those words. Of course not. Just remember 3 of them. Take 3 of them. The gifts of the good spirit are these: a flourishing personality, a harmonious personality, a grateful personality. Grateful? Grateful? How can that be for people who have been through tragedy and sadness? Dr. Robert Emmons, a psychologist, wrote this: "We would not choose to suffer in order to become more grateful, yet historical examples and research have shown that trials and adversity can result in positive character changes." And he goes on, "People can adopt an attitude towards their suffering that allows it to be a meaningful component of life, perhaps opening the threshold to a deeper, more authentic existence." Where that happens, gratitude becomes a pervasive part of the human personality. Personality in its various expressions changes, and we change. We can, of course, close down, determined to remain set in our ways. Any one of us can do that, and we're the poorer for it. It is possible to open the personality to the doorways of something new and different and enjoyable. So what would you like to see in the Australian personality? We know that in many social situations or in overseas trips, Australians like to depict the Australian personality as loud and garrulous. Well, I don't need to go overseas for that. I've got them next door. But in more reflective mode, what would you like to see in the Australian personality? So for myself, I'm going to encourage another five expressions of the personality for the Australian, every Australian. Indeed, why limited to Australia? I'd like to see a person being thoughtful. Thoughtful as a person looks for deeper meanings to life and to life's experiences. I'd like to see a growth of intelligence. Not the kind of intelligence that they do in the intelligence tests so much, but intelligent work life. There is such a thing as work intelligence, retirement intelligence, relationship intelligence, aging intelligence. And it can be different for each one of those. That's the second thing. Third thing I'd like is generosity, giving. Bill Clinton, former President of the United States, in his book called Giving, says giving is not only about money. It is about time and skills, reconciliation, new beginnings. If we just all gave according to our ability, he says, the positive impact would be staggering. Giving, he wrote, is an essential step on the path to full enlightenment. On the path to full enlightenment. Number 4. Oh yes. E. Be excited. Expansive. Exhilarating. The E+ personality. Could we all decide to try and find that E+ in our life? That was number 4. And number 5, how about resilience? Being able to bounce back, being able to begin again, being part of a renewal, as the scripture said today. Behold, I make things new. The Australian could be the tiger. She always dreamed of being or wanted to be. Tiger, yes. Thoughtfulness, T. Intelligence, I. Generosity, G. Excitement, E. What was number 5? Resilience. Tiger. Be the tiger. How do you get there? You get there by being aware That's why these addresses, this event every Sunday morning can be so important. It's a growth of awareness. It's learning. It's influence. It's finding good models, having a dream, being determined. All of that. And then add to that, become a carrier of a good spirit. So any observer anywhere could say, look, this person, a person that we will affirm and support because they're a carrier of a good spirit, because they're energized with a good spirit. Oh yes, a good spirit. Would you please stand? And would you pause for the blessing? May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence, a good spirit, be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forward. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.